May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Lots of kids love Christmas. And this is not only true of those of us who are of young age, but also those of us who have been around for a few decades, those of us with a little kid side of ourselves. We enjoy all those bright colors and those pretty lights and the cool songs like Rudolph and Frosty. And there is an exponentially larger amount of candy around at Christmas time than there are at other times of the year. Yes, indeed. And of course, there is Santa Claus and the presents. Now, when I was a kid, me and my two sisters, we got way too many presents. It was ridiculous. It was embarrassing and inappropriate how many presents we got when we were kids. You could build a mountain out of all the presents we got and climb on it. You could build a fort out of all of our presents. And here is how it happened. See, my mom and dad, they loved us. Love is the essential ingredient of Christmas and the essential ingredient of any good home. Okay? Now, your Christmas at some times may have been a sad Christmas. Sometimes we have sad Christmases and hard Christmases. And I'm very sad and sorry if that has happened to you. But still, if you can love at Christmas, it's still Christmas. And if you have family around, we share love with our families. If we don't have our family around and we have friends, we share love with our friends. And if you are on your own at Christmas time this year, you can share the love of God with yourself. And it's still Christmas, as long as there's love. So my mom and dad loved each other, and they loved us, and this was a great gift to us. Also helpful in building a good home is respectful, honest, frequent, and clear communication. Now, my parents were respectful to each other, and they were honest with each other, but clear and frequent communication, they could have used a little improvement in that department. No family is perfect, and neither are kids, by the way. Here's how it happened. My dad was a pastor, okay? So at Christmas time, he was running around all the whole time, very crazy, lining up the school bus for the kids to go Christmas caroling and the Christmas party for the youth group after the Christmas caroling, which he had to get some good chaperones for, because then if he didn't, it would get too bohemian, you see, and we would have problems with mom and dad later on. Decorating the sanctuary for Christmas Eve. By the way, I want to say thank you to everybody who has stepped up in the congregation to make this Advent and Christmas season a blessed one. You all have done a great job, and it is truly appreciated. But my dad was running back and forth like a crazy man the whole time. And my mom would go out and buy us an appropriate number of Christmas presents for the kids. Would my dad know about this? No, he would not. Even if she told him about it, would he hear it? No, he did not, because he was running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And about 2 or 3 days before Christmas Eve, he would pop his head up out of his craziness and said, "Oh my God, there's no toys for the children at Christmas." And he would rush out to Edgewater Mall without calling my mother. He could have called my mother and said, "Dear Mary," is what he called her, Mary, "are there any toys for the children at Christmas?" And she would say, "Yes, dear." But no, he did not do that. He rushed out to Edgewater Mall in Biloxi, Mississippi, to the really great toy store right next to Gaylord's. And he would go in there and he would get his Hot Wheels and Barbie dolls and Easy Bake Ovens and Rock'em Sock'em robots. My dad was a great Christmas present getter. And he would haul all this loot back to the house and probably never take it out of the car until after midnight Christmas Eve services. Y'all remember that? Midnight Christmas Eve services. Okay. He would get it out of the car, midnight Christmas Eve services, and my mom and dad would realize what had happened. And they would take a lot of the night putting together all kinds of things and wrapping things up. And the next morning they would sit on the couch totally exhausted and unable to move because they were so tired. And we always had SpaghettiOs for Christmas dinner because that was all they could muster on Christmas Day. And us children were happily unwrapping our presents and unwrapping our presents. And my mom and dad would say, with a very guilty expression, they would say, kids, don't get your expectations up. Next year is not going to be as big a Christmas as it is this year. And we, with our little cherub smiles, would say, yes, mommy, yes, daddy. And we keep our little cherub mouths shut all year and not remind mom and dad to communicate about the Christmas presents. And the thing would happen the next Christmas again. Yes. Yes. Now, answer me this. Do you think that all those presents would have mattered at all if there was no love behind them? Probably not. No matter how many presents you get at Christmas, it's the love behind them that matters. My dad used to tell the story about when he was a kid, and he was 4 or 5 years old. And it was the time of the Great Depression. So there was no work, and there was no money. And so his parents, my grandma and my granddad, sat him down and said, Billy, that was his name, Billy, there will be no Christmas presents this year because there's no work and there's no money. And this did not register with my father's 5-year-old mind. He went through Christmas and he saw the pretty colors and he heard the cool songs and he said, oh, it's Christmas. And he comes rushing down the stairs on Christmas morning and he sees the living room and there are no Christmas presents in the living room. And just as his 5-year-old face begins to dissolve into tears, you know how you got about a quarter of a second when a child's 5-year-old face begins to dissolve into tears. You got about a quarter of a second to save the day, all right, before you're into chaos. Just as his face begins to fall into tears, my grandfather says, and now it is time for the magic show. Because my grandfather was an illusionist. That means he was a magician. And he could pull the quarter out from behind your ear. And you would go like this, and you'd think, where did that quarter come from? He could guess the card that you had picked out of the card deck, and you didn't know how he did it. He was a magician. And so he did a magic show for little Billy. And then they went hiking in the hills around Roanoke, Virginia. And then Grandma made a yummy supper. And then they played games. And then they sang songs. And then they read stories until little Billy went to sleep. And my grandmother and grandfather had planned the whole day to spend with little Billy. And that's the Christmas he told about. That was the Christmas that he told about. Because that Christmas, he knew especially well that he was loved. That he was loved. The love at Christmas that we bear now, whether our Christmases in the past have been sad or happy, is powerful and beautiful and holy. And sometimes we can feel like we have to hold that love in and we have to protect it in the 4 walls of our own homes. And that's understandable because the world can be a scary place. This world can be a brutal place, can't it? There are hard things in the world. And we almost want to cling to the light of Christmas and the warmth of Christmas and the love of Christmas as if it's something that we had to preserve and protect from the world. Because out there, man, the reality, the true reality of the world dissolves into a Game of Thrones, dissolves into darkness. That's understandable. That's understandable. That's understandable. But you know what? You and I have come to church on Christmas Eve. We have come to the church on Christmas Eve. Which means that we are willing to entertain the possibility that this life and this light and this hope and this happiness is not just something that comes from us, and it certainly doesn't stop with us. It comes from somewhere deep and powerful beyond us and beneath us, beyond our ability to think of or imagine, and it goes to every human being on this planet and every atom of creation. In other words, we are here because we have hope. Hope that this love comes from God, and it comes into this world as a person, a physical person, thereby making all of us physical people, our bodies, holy. Your body is beautiful. Your body is holy. We believe that this love of God came to us as a child in a manger, and doesn't just stay within our homes or even within our churches, but reaches to the parts of the world and parts of their own souls that are broken and lost and forgotten and destitute and even cruel. Comes to us at the cross, in other words. The love of God is deeper than the Game of Thrones or the void, deeper than any scary thing that we can imagine. So, for example, tonight, this night, in Bethlehem of Judea, the Christian churches, Roman Catholic, Orthodox, Lutheran, Presbyterian, all of them, are not celebrating Christmas Eve. They are having prayers for help from God in a situation that seems completely hopeless. Because most of the Christians in Bethlehem and in the state of Israel are Arab. They are Palestinian. And they are calling on God for help because they are torn apart from the inside out. They are sad and upset and crying because there is a war in Gaza. And wars kill people. So they're praying. In the front of Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem of Judea, a Lutheran church of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Jordan and the Holy Land, which is a partner with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, our denomination, there is a manger scene. And usually they have a manger scene just like ours, Mary and Joseph, the baby Jesus. They also have the shepherds and the angels and everybody. Except this year, the Christ child is not laying in a manger. He is laying in a pile of rubble, which they have put there. Because that's where Jesus is tonight, with the children who are pulled out of the piles of rubble from the bombing in Gaza. Jesus is there with them, and Jesus is here with us. In the midst of our celebration, in the midst of their terror, Jesus is with us, and we are together. So I have brought with me a few pieces of rubble. Now, I need to make sure that everybody understands who these pieces of rubble are for. This piece of rubble is not for anybody who uses terror and hatred and dehumanization. That means when you speak about people and you treat people as if they weren't really a person, as if they weren't really human. This is not for anybody who will treat people and speak of people as if they were less than human. God still loves them. I am contractually obligated to say this. But they're not listening right now. They kind of gone out on their own. This piece of rubble is for the children of Gaza, because the baby Jesus is with them and with us also. We are together. I'm going to put this right by the baby Jesus. I have another piece of rubble here. Again, not for anybody who would use terror and dehumanization. It doesn't matter what country we come from, doesn't matter what religion we believe in, doesn't matter which political ideology we follow. If we are hating people, we kind of gone out on our own. This is for the Jewish children of Israel who were killed and hurt in the terrorist attacks on October the 7th. Because the Christ child is with them and with us. We are together. Here's a piece of rubble for the children of Ukraine. Vladimir Putin says, "Oh, I think I'll make myself look good, and I will take over Ukraine," and the bombs fall and people die. Christ child is with those kids. Haven't heard so much about Ukraine lately, have we? Not so big in the news, eh? They're still there. Jesus is still there. This piece of rubble is for the children of Sudan. A terrible civil war going on there in Sudan. Haven't heard even less about the children of Sudan, have we, in the news? And yet they are just as important as the children of Ukraine and the children of Gaza and the children of Israel and the children in our own homes and in our own church. They are just as important. And the Christ child is with them, and the Christ child is with us, and we are together. And one more piece of rubble. This is for every child and every person, every grown-up, and every time or place who has ever been abused or hurt or neglected. This is for you. If anything like that has ever happened to you, the Christ child is with you in the hard times as well as in the happy times. And we are together. We have come to the church on Christmas Eve. That means we believe that the love of God and the power of God is deeper than any destruction, deeper than death itself, and that it will win. The love of God will win. And so we seek to allow the love of God to sweep us up into itself, into the work, because love is a gift. The love of God is a gift, but the life of God is work. The love of Christmas is a gift, but the life of Christmas is work. It takes work to make peace. You don't just sit down and not fight. That's not peace. It takes work and sweat to make peace. It takes work and sweat to bring wholeness. And we bring ourselves to the work. Whatever work we are called to, whatever work we find, we do for the sake of others, for the sake of the love of God, for all people and for creation. Because, you know what? The real truth is not the void. The real truth beneath it all is the joy of God. And our destiny is not yet another episode of Game of Thrones. Our destiny is God's laughter. Merry Christmas.